Welcome to the first episode of the Mayoral Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Mayer, and in this episode, I'm going to be kicking off my gun series with talking about assault weapons. I think the first thing I need to do is define the term assault weapon, just to make sure that everyone that's watching this episode knows exactly what I'm referring to when using it. There's really no true definition to the term assault weapon, so I need to make sure that we're all on the same page. It's technically anything that's used to commit assault can be defined as an assault weapon. But I'm going to use the definition here from Merriam-Webster. Assault weapon, any various automatic or semi-automatic firearms, especially assault rifle. I think that is a good definition in terms of what people think about when they hear the term assault weapon. They typically think of semi-automatic rifles. So that's really what I'm going to be referring to when talking about the semi-automatic rifle. Okay, so what's the debate? The debate is about should these be banned or should these be allowed? And I'm going to explain this the way that I approach it, which is trying to let the numbers guide my decision making. I'm going to come to a conclusion based off the data that's out there, okay? So the first thing, though, we need to find out is what is the reason for calling for the ban? Because right now, currently in the United States, these assault weapons or these semi-automatic rifles are legal. So the people that are making the case to calling for them to be illegal, what is their case? The overwhelming case to make these illegal is mass shootings. The problem with these guns, according to them, is that they're used to kill mass amounts of people. So we have to ask, what is the goal if we do ban these? Do we want to get rid of all of them? Is there a certain percentage that we think we can get rid of? And what would be acceptable? So, for example, if currently we're at 1 million people that die in mass shootings per year, what would be an acceptable number to the person that you're talking about or the person making the case? So say if that number went from 1 million to 500,000, would that be acceptable to the person that you're talking to? Where you say, okay, it's a problem, but it's not as big a problem. You know, people should have a certain level of freedoms and, you know, I'd be okay with that. So you kind of need to gauge the person that you're talking to. I think that those are very important things to make sure that you do when you're having these conversations, because you don't want to automatically either, if you're on either side of the argument, find out where the person's coming from and try to find some middle ground right out the gate. Okay, so there's a couple of different places that I'm going to be using data from here today. One is everytown.org. Everytown.org is a group that's funded by the former mayor of New York, Michael Bloomberg. So that's his research place for this, for this gun violence. And then I'm also going to use the FBI. Now, they have a little bit different definitions when it comes to what they define and what they calculate. And I'll try to do my best to kind of differentiate the two and so the listeners know why there's a discrepancy in those numbers. So Everytown currently defines it, referring to mass shootings, as a shooting in which 4 or more people are shot and killed, again, excluding the shooter. So let me give you an example of one that just happened here in Ohio. I live in Ohio. There was a person that killed her husband, her son, I believe her father or father-in-law, and then shot. And I don't know if her daughter's dead yet. It's March 4th right now. Last time I checked, the daughter was in critical condition. So that is a mass shooting. According to Everytown research, it's something that happened in the home, wasn't out in public. Now, the FBI defines it as such. FBI does not have a mass shooting definition. Instead, the FBI defines mass murder as an incident where 4 or more people are shot and killed. But they do have a definition, or they do have a term that they use that would fit Everytown, which would be an active shooter situation. The difference between the active shooter and Everytown's research is the active shooter is going to be in a public location. So I'll read you that definition right now. So the FBI defines an active shooter as 1 or more individuals actively engaging in killing or attempting to kill people in a populated area. So that would be the difference in the discrepancy in these numbers that you're going to hear here today. is the fact that every town is going to count that scenario that I told you about, the unfortunate scenario that just happened just outside of Cincinnati here in Ohio, where the wife killed the husband, the son, the father-in-law, and then it attempted to kill the daughter. She's still alive at this moment. So that would be captured in every town. It will not be captured in the FBI statistics. Now, I think it's important to highlight both of them, because the FBI statistics are going to be the ones that are going to be more reflective of the argument that I think that people are making. But I'm going to present both of them just to be safe, just so people can hear the numbers. So I think one of the things that I see and I hear is a lot of kind of conflicting standpoints. And I'm going to use an example directly from everytown.org here. It says, researchers estimate that if we still had a federal assault weapons ban, we'd see 70% fewer mass shooting deaths. Okay, mass shooting deaths, 70% less if we still had the ban. Right next to it, it says mass shootings that involve assault weapons account for 25% of all mass shooting deaths. I don't know why they would put those not only on the same site, but literally right next to each other. When you say that researchers, and you put it out there, you say, if we banned assault weapons, we would see a 70% drop in the amount of deaths that occur in mass shootings. Okay, and these are experts, researchers, whoever these people are. I don't know who they are. But then the actual data right next to it, which you can actually look at the past and say, okay, in these mass shootings, what percentage of the deaths were inflicted by these assault weapons? And the number's 25. I don't know how you come up with 70. That to me is just is a glaring issue when it comes to presenting this data. I think you need to be factual about it, and it seems like the 25% is actually accounting for things that have happened, and the 70% is just a projection, and it's clearly a bad projection when you see the numbers right next to it saying only 25% of these deaths are involving assault weapons. So I just wanted to put that out there just to like kind of illustrate some of the nonsense that we see kind of, you know, when looking at these numbers and trying to find a reasonable solution and like trying to find an answer. Should we ban them? Should we not ban them? You see things like that, and it really confuses people and gets people kind of butting heads with each other and really getting in arguments. I don't think that there should be much of an argument here. When you're saying 25% of things that actually happened are caused, which is, you know, in this case, deaths from mass shootings, are caused by assault weapons, but you're projecting somehow 70% would go away. That makes no sense. It makes literally no sense. I can't believe that, you know, that they would put those literally right next to each other. On its face, there's nothing that I can do to square those two numbers. Okay? So continuing on with Everytown. So what's the problem? It says in 12 years between 2009 and 2020, 1,363 people were shot and killed in the United States in a mass shooting. Okay, so 1,363 people. So what does that equate to on a yearly basis? Okay, so that equates to 114 people that are shot and killed in mass shootings per year, according to everytown.com. Again, I just read the statistic here that says mass shootings that involve an assault weapon account for 25% of all mass shooting deaths. This is the same company that's putting out the same data. So I'm saying in my head, 25%, if we could prevent 25% of these mass shooting deaths, again, 1,363 in a 12-year period between 2009 and 2020, that's 114 per year, but we can only prevent 25% of those if we were to ban them. Again, that's assuming, that's making the assumption that the person who is deranged enough to go out there and mass kill people isn't going to do one of two other things. It's assuming that it's going to do that this person's going to do the third thing, but it's assuming that this person's not going to do one, either legally obtain handguns and just have more handguns to carry out this heinous crime, or two, again, the law would then ban them from buying these type of weapons, but there will always be a black market. They have no problem breaking the law, killing multiple people. I don't see them having a problem breaking the law and buying the gun. Now, it might be more inconvenient for them. That could be that would certainly be true. It certainly would be more inconvenient for them and might deter them from doing that, because these people might be very lazy and they might just then obtain the legal handguns. But this kind of makes the assumption that the third option is going to happen if you're going to prevent all these deaths just by banning these guns, which is that this person who has the proclivity to murder multiple people will just throw their hands up and say, oh, I can't get the weapon that I want legally, so I'm just not going to shoot anyone at all. That doesn't seem logical at all. So what number can you really prevent? I don't know. But even if you make that assumption that either you prevent every single one of these deaths, which is 114 per year, that would be an extreme stretch, because, again, they're saying that 25% of those are assault weapon related. So that number should be close to 30, but we can go with the 114, and I'll throw some statistics out there later that show that even the 114, God, I don't think it's worth it. But I'll continue. So this is according to the U.S. Department of Justice. It says Office of Justice Programs, and this is according to FBI data on mass shootings. So it says, for purposes of tracking crime, the FBI defines a, quote, mass shooting as any incident in which at least 4 people are murdered with a gun. Now, previously, the other definition that I read, that was, I believe, from USA Today. It said that they don't have a definition of mass shooting. They just have mass murder. And we know definitively from their website they have a definition of active shooter. So this is from the DOJ. This is a sub-department of the DOJ, the Office of Justice Programs. I'm not really familiar with them, but it's, ojp.gov is where I'm getting this information from. This is a report that came out during the Obama administration, so it's about a decade old. But it said, it was talking about these mass shootings. So according to them, the FBI does have a definition. Who knows if they do or they don't? But if they do have a definition, it seems like it's definitely the mass murder side, where it's going to be 4 or more people getting shot and killed, and combine that with the active shooter. So that seems to be what they're looking at. So the survey found that the assault weapon or high capacity magazines were used in at least 23% of incidents. So which is shockingly similar to the numbers that we just saw from Everytown Research, which was saying 25% of deaths were from these assault weapons. So this is essentially saying that the same data. Again, this data is a little bit old. It's from 2013, but it's tracking the years 2009 to 2013. Okay, so let's go to the FBI statistics. Now, you go to their website and you can see that they have an active shooter database, data from 2000 to 2019. So it's a 20-year span. This document that you'd have to click on and find is 35 pages long. It has here a total of 1,062 people dying in active shooter. Again, they're not going to capture everything that our Everytown Research would capture. So these numbers are naturally going to be a little bit lower, because they have a different threshold to classify these active shooters, right? To classify these specific types of mass shootings. Okay. So we got, again, 1,062 between 2019. Between 2000 and 2019. 38 in 2020, and 103 in 2021. For reference, I just looked at the report from 2021. That one came out in May of 2022. We are in March of 2023. So I expect that the numbers for 2022 are being compiled, and you'll probably see that data in about a couple months. So again, 1,062 total deaths in the 20-year time frame. We have 38 in 2020 and 103 in 2021. So that is 22 years. You add those up and divide it by 22. You're talking an average of 55 deaths per year. So again, we're going off the assumption that mass shootings are the reason we're going to ban semi-automatic weapons, or in this case, we're talking about assault weapons, defining them basically as semi-automatic rifles. Banning them is going to prevent mass shootings, going to prevent mass death, according to the two different sites that I looked at, Everytown and the FBI website. One is saying that there's a total of 114 per year. Again, that's 2009 through 2020. And then the FBI has got the data for 20-year stretch, and I just added the last 2 years in that they have. So I have a 22-year sample there, and they're saying when you average that out to 55 deaths per year. Okay, so then you look at on their website. This is FBI still. They have the active shooter incidents for 2020 and 2021. Those are separate documents from the one that has the 20-year time frame. And in that, they have a map that has the states and shows where the majority, or where all these active shooter situations happen. So I find it interesting that the state with the most active shooter incidents in 2020 was California with 6, Illinois 5, and then you had 3 states with 3. You had Texas, Florida, and you had Missouri. So California and Illinois have 2 of the strictest gun laws, and they ban assault weapons. Yet they had more active shooter situations than any other state. So it goes to my point earlier when I was saying, if you think that criminals care about your gun law that's going to prevent them from carrying out these acts of pure evil, what are you basing that on? Like, you got somebody who's mentally deranged and is willing to mass kill people, and they're just going to throw their hands up and say, okay, well, I can't legally buy a semi-automatic rifle, so I'm just not going to do it at all. Again, this is showing that California, this is 2020. Okay, it's 1 year. But you got 2 of the most restrictive states in the country leading the way. Both Illinois and California combined for 11. You got Florida and Texas that combined for 6. I don't know off the top of my head the population between Texas, Florida, versus you combine that population versus California and Illinois, but I bet you it's fairly similar. Obviously, California is the largest state in the country, but Texas is 2 and Florida's 3. So it doesn't really. I mean, in those states it's not, and then you probably hear people blame it on other states that they were legally able to get it. But do you know that? Like, yeah, it was illegal for them to cross the state line to go buy a gun and then bring it back to California. Didn't stop them from doing that. What's to stop them from going on the black market and buying the gun? I just don't see the logic behind it. It doesn't seem to prevent it. And I'm not saying that their laws led to more shootings. My point is simply this, that it didn't prevent them. Doesn't seem, at least from this data in 2020. Looking at 2021, this is FBI again. This is going to be the 2021 report for active shooters. So active shooter incidents in the United States in 2021 is the name of this document here, directly off the FBI website. And I'm looking at, who's the worst state? California, 6. More than any other state. You got Georgia and Texas with 5. And Colorado and Florida with 4. Okay, so Florida, Florida and Texas on the bad list 2 years in a row, but they weren't the worst. California was the worst 2 years in a row, 2020, 2021. So, again, I think to take the guns away from these people, you need to. The burden of proof is on those people that are making that argument, and it's not showing, at least with these active shooter situations. California's got more than anywhere else. I understand they have more people, but they don't have that much more than Texas. They had double in 2020, one more in 2021, so it wasn't that much more, right? But I think the burden of proof falls on the people that want to ban these, right? So then I go back to the numbers and I say, okay, look, you're talking about 114 people per year. That seems awfully low to me. There's people out there that will also make the argument that one life is enough to make this ban. Like if we could save one person, then it would be worth it. That's kind of the COVID logic of why we should lock everything down. Like why would we lock everything down for one person? Yeah, it's terrible to say, but then you could literally say that about anything. And let me give you a couple of examples here. So if you're saying law-abiding citizens cannot have a firearm that is a semi-automatic rifle, an assault weapon, not because they're going to break the law, but because other people will break the law with it, you can apply that logic to nearly everything. So, according to, this is from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. I'm going to read you numbers. 496 in 2016, 450 in 2017, 393 in 2018, 430 in 2019, 396 in 2020. Those numbers are the numbers of people who were killed in car accidents involving people using their phone, texting and driving, okay? And I know that you're going to hear people say it's a false equivalency. I'm not making the case that these are the same things. I'm talking statistically, saying if you make the case that the people that cannot buy semi-automatic rifles because you want to prevent these mass shootings and these mass deaths. Well, according to two different sites that I went off of, one says there's going to be an average of 55 per year. That's FBI. And then Everytown, which classifies it a little bit different, says 114. Forget about the fact that they both are saying that only 25% of those deaths occur with these weapons. Forget about that. Let's just take these numbers and say that the 100% of these are. If you make that case, then you can make that case about texting. You could say, okay, 433 people. That's the average when you add these five numbers up and divide it by 5. 433 people die per year. I know that, Mr. X or Mrs. Y, I know that you are a good person and you don't text and drive, but you know what? Other people do. So I'm going to need your cell phone. You can't have your cell phone. You turn your cell phone over? Are you? How about another one? Okay, well, there's more utility for cell phone. Everyone has a cell phone, right? Making false equivalencies. Matt, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Okay, fine. What about alcohol? Now, we've already banned that. That didn't work out too well. But this is the CDC's numbers here, directly off the CDC website. Now, I'm just using the year 2020. And the reason I'm using 2020 is because this is the most recent data I can find, one. And then two, nobody was ever driving in 2020. The bars were locked down. You couldn't do anything in 2020. So in 2020, 11,654 people were killed in motor vehicle crashes involving alcohol-impaired drivers. Drinking and driving is already illegal everywhere. You can't drink and drive. You can have like a beer and drive, but broadly speaking, illegal. You can't drink and drive. So why do you think people still break the law? They're just going to break the law. There might not be a nefarious reason for it. They might just be trying to get home. I'm not trying to stick up for these people that drink and drive and kill people by doing so. But there might be people that make that case like, oh, well, that wasn't what they intended to do. Well, okay, regardless of intent, you're talking about saving 11,654 people's lives if you were to ban alcohol. If your logic is that, hey, if we ban it, we're going to save all these lives. Why aren't you making that case? You emptying your liquor cabinet? No? Probably not. I wouldn't think so. And again, we've already tried it and it didn't work. And the logic that we used to have an assault weapons ban, that's a terrible logic too. We used to have we used to have a lot of terrible laws on the books. And you look at it and you say, okay, 433 deaths per year from texting and driving. Okay. According to either website, I'm going to use both. If you go to off Everytown Research and you say, okay, 114. Okay, well, if you're going to ban texting and driving, you're going to save 433 lives. That's 3.5 times more than what Everytown Research would say if we banned guns, if we assault weapons to prevent mass shootings. Okay. Now, the FBI has got 55 deaths per year. Okay, so 433 divided by 55 is about 7.5. 7.5 times more lives. Why can't we save those 7.5? Why can't we ban cell phones? It's already illegal to text and drive. People do it anyway. They don't care. They're going to do it. And yeah, again, they're not. And I would think in most cases they're not intending to do it. But the intent when it comes to saving lives, does it really matter to you? Apparently, maybe it does. Well, what about alcohol? Okay, going again. Everytown Research, 114 deaths per year. You have to do 102 times as many deaths in mass shootings to equal the amount of drunk driving deaths. 212 times if you use the FBI statistics. I don't hear anyone calling for the banning of alcohol. And here's one more thing. I'll give you one more, and then I'll wrap it up here. This is according to weather.gov, National Weather Service. I told my wife this before, and she's like, "That doesn't make any sense." And again, she's false equivalency. And it's about the statistics. It's about the mindset when it comes to this, right? On average, 270 people per year are struck by lightning. 270. So if you go off that average, and you use the higher number, you go off of Bloomberg's site, the everytownresearch.org, and say 114, okay? That's close to 2.5 times. You're 2.5 times more likely to be struck by lightning than die in a mass shooting in America. Now, I don't know about everyone else, but when I think of the way we need to structure society and the laws that we need to implement, I don't think we need to spend the time banning something that causes 2.5 times less deaths than people struck by lightning. You don't see people making this case for about anything else. But you're telling me that I'm 2.5 times more likely to be struck by lightning than somebody die in a mass shooting. I'm not going to get on board with saying we need to ban assault weapons. I think for me, just kind of recap here, when it comes to combating these arguments, the arguments that can be made, or really the defense of the arguments, should kind of all be the same. But the arguments are typically, prevent mass shootings. One, you're not going to prevent all of them, but let's just say that's the argument. And you got to ask yourself, what's the goal? What's acceptable? And I don't know that some of these people would even know that these numbers are that low. I mean, I wouldn't know without looking them up. Who knows these off the top of their head? No one knows these off the top of their head, unless they've literally looked them up, like myself. So, what's the goal? To eliminate all of them? You're never going to eliminate everything. If the goal is to eliminate everything bad in society, then, we're going to be living like North Korea pretty soon, and nobody wants that. The thought that government can prevent everything bad in society is also a really bad idea to even, pretend that can happen. There's no way. Government can't, they can't prevent anything. So what's the goal? Is it to reduce it by a certain percentage? Is it to take all of them off the books? And what's acceptable? So I think you'd probably get a lot of people right off the bat if you say, what number is acceptable? What if there was, 100 people that died in mass shootings per year? People are like, oh, yeah, that's not that bad. Well, those are the numbers. I don't think people really realize that. But what's acceptable? If somebody's saying like one is, you hear the argument, one is not enough. Well, now you're talking to somebody who's just, again, that wants government to take care of everything evil in the world, which can never do. And again, if you say one's enough, or one's enough life to save, you could say that about anything. You can then point out the statistics of driving. Point out the statistics that 300 or 433 people per year die in texting and driving, and that's way underreported. That's only reported. Those are all like self-reported people. So most people are not reporting that they were texting and driving that led to somebody else's death. Drunk driving, that's pretty easy. Like if somebody gets in an accident, you give them a breathalyzer, are they over the limit? Okay, 11,654. Even if you take the high number again, it's 100 times, 100x. So if you're saying one death, why don't we just get rid of alcohol? Why don't we get rid of everything that's bad in society? The third argument you might hear is that you don't need it. So who's to say you don't need it? If that's the reason to take something away is because somebody doesn't need it, and then it could potentially cause somebody's death, then you could say that again. That I point to alcohol again. Like you don't need alcohol to live. You don't even need a cell phone to live. But like that, there's much more utility in it. So don't point to that. Point to alcohol. You don't need alcohol to live. You're talking about saving 100 times the amount of people by banning that versus banning assault weapons. That should be your goal, is to get rid of those. All right, everyone. A little bit of a rant there. Obviously, this being the first episode, hopefully get a little bit cleaner moving forward. I want to thank everyone who watched it. Do me a favor, make sure that you subscribe, you follow me, you hit the like button, the share button. This is going to help me, grow and potentially produce more content. Again, like I said at the beginning of this episode, this is my first episode on my gun series. It's probably going to be 3, maybe 4 total episodes, depending on how I'm able to kind of break this up. But I want to thank everyone for tuning in, and I will see you in the next video.